All right, let's stay with the story and get some analysis now, particularly on the rising number of suspected criminals being killed at the hands of the police. And for this conversation, we're joined by the IPID's spokesperson, Phaladi Shuping, and the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els. Can I start with you, Mr. Els, and ask the question based on what I suspect is a divided community of Desai and the surrounding areas in KZN. On the one hand, you most probably have a community that is saying, well, this is ultimately what was going to result of criminal activity. But on the other, you have family members of the deceased who are saying, it's unbelievable that my child could have been involved in something like this. What's your assessment of how you could pull that kind of community together?
Good evening to you, Kolile. Yeah, it is really a situation where we sit with a divided community, and that due to the extremely high numbers of crime, especially serious and violent crime and contact crimes that have taken over much of our communities. And as you could hear from your insert prior to our interview, how traumatized the communities on both sides are. Of course, it is a traumatizing event if one of your relatives are being killed by the police. But on the other hand, we must understand that in most incidences, when your family members are involved in crime, you are on some level are suspecting that might be the case. And our challenge is that in this divided community, we could see that, and we could also hear from your inserts, is that these criminals or these suspects, if we can call them, they didn't hesitate to use violence or firearms in order to intimidate, and that further traumatized, of course, the community.
Yeah. Mr. Shuping, let's bring you into the conversation. Your job as the police watchdog is to ensure that police conduct themselves in accordance with the law. And as you've heard in that insert, the strong suggestions here are that these were teenagers who were terrorizing this community. So how do you conduct your work as the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in a situation such as this one?
Well, good evening, Cody, and good evening to your viewers. Fortunately, from our side, our job is easy. We've got a mandate that we have to follow as IPID. It does not matter to us how the incident happened, for as long as there is death as a result of police action or there is a discharge of firearm by police officials, which are instances that falls within the mandate of IPID. We have an obligation to investigate, and I can make it clear that when we investigate, it's not to say that we suspect wrongdoing. We investigate because there is an action that was taken by the police, an action that falls within the mandate of the IPID. And there are instances where we would investigate, but we find that we exonerate the police officials who are allegedly involved because we find out they acted within the limits of the law.
Yeah.
But there are also cases where we find that, unfortunately, they did not act within the parameters of the law. So we always make a recommendation to SAPS, and then we'll take a docket, give it to the prosecutors for prosecutors to decide on the prosecution of whoever that is involved.
And so in an instance like this, Mr. Shuping, the police are going to say they were defending themselves against suspected criminals who were shooting at them at the time that they possibly wanted to apprehend them. Is that always easy to prove?
Well, the Criminal Procedure Act allows the police officers to protect themselves. If they find themselves in a violent situation, if they have to use a firearm, that is the reason why they are giving those firearms if they have to use them to protect themselves or to protect members of the public, they have to. But on the other side, our responsibility is to investigate. Once there is an action taken by the police, we will investigate. But hence I'm saying we are not investigating because we are assuming that there is wrongdoing from the side of the police. We are investigating because the action that was allegedly taken by the police is an action that falls within the mandate of IPID. So we'll investigate either to exonerate the police, or if they acted outside the parameters of the law, then we'll also make a recommendation that there be prosecution.
Yeah. Mr. Els, let's come back to you. The statistics on the ticker at the bottom there are very clear. Since April of this year, there have been 80 people, rather last year, 80 people, 80, have been killed at the hands of police officers. At which point, or is there a fine line between police defending themselves and what some people who are au fait with the law will start using the term extrajudicial killings?
Collie, there's a fine line, you know, and we should not underestimate the importance of the work that IPID is doing. IPID is there to look after the police, to protect them when they are using their firearms in terms of the law, but they're also there to protect the public against the unlawful use of a firearm. But you must just understand where the policeman is coming from. I've been a policeman for many years myself, and you know, you as a police official, when you draw your firearm and you use of your firearm, you have to make that decision whether to use it within a split second or within seconds. That normally takes a court of law sometimes years to decide whether you actually did the right thing in terms of the law. And that just emphasizes the need for very good training for our police officials, that when they are using their firearms, that they are 100% sure that they are using it within the auspices of the law. Your numbers that you are citing there, yes, it is alarming high, but so are our murder rate. So is our serious and violent. I mean, we sit with about 72 people being murdered per hour, per day in South Africa. So that just plays up against the violent crimes that are being perpetrated in South Africa, and those are only the murders. That's not only emphasizing the armed robberies. We look at, for instance, your kidnappings for ransom. You know, over the past 10 years, it rose by 260%. So that's just an indication to you that South Africa became a very, very violent country where your criminals lost their fear and respect for the police. They don't hesitate to use their firearms against the police. So that put the police in a really dangerous, but also in a difficult situation, because more and more they have to rely on that judgment of them. That is then be scrutinized. Of course, it should be rightly so by IPID. Did they do the right thing or did they not do the right thing?
Willem Els, let me thank you very much for your time. He is with the Institute for Security Studies, and Phaladi Shuping speaks for the Independent Police Investigative Authority, or Directorate rather, and they are the police watchdog.